He is an image burned into the collective consciousness. The single white glove, the black fedora, a silhouette moving in ways that seem to defy physics. The roar of the crowd is a physical force, a testament to a man who is less a musician and more a global phenomenon. But behind the blinding spotlights and sold-out stadiums lies a throne built not just of platinum records, but of shadows. A darkness that stretches all the way back to a tiny house on a dusty street. Maybe everything you thought you knew about the King of Pop is just the glittering surface of a much deeper, more troubled story. Have we been watching a performance all along, even when the music stopped? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know you're tuned in. Drop a comment with your city and the time on your clock right now. I'm curious to see where this story reaches. As we go, I invite you to share your thoughts. Was he a victim or a master of his own narrative? The story begins not on a world stage, but in the smog-filled air of Gary, Indiana during the 1960s. Here, a musical dynasty is being forged in the crucible of fear. The man orchestrating it all is Joseph Jackson, a steel worker by day and a relentless band manager by night. He sees talent in his sons, but he cultivates it not with encouragement, but with an iron fist. He stands over them, his belt often unbuckled, a silent threat that punctuates every missed note or fumbled step. The rehearsals are not joyful jam sessions. They are grueling, soul-crushing affairs that last for hours, robbing the boys of a childhood. Michael, the youngest and most sensitive, bears the brunt of the verbal and physical punishment. It's a strange and tragic irony. The man who gave him the tools for fame also gave him the scars that would make that fame unbearable. Even as a global superstar worth hundreds of millions of dollars, the mere sight of his father can trigger a wave of nausea, a visceral sickness born from years of terror. This isn't just discipline, it's deep psychological conditioning. This brutal upbringing coincides with the golden era of Motown Records in nearby Detroit, the hit-making factory that catapults the Jackson 5 to stardom. Yet, academics and psychologists still argue whether Joseph Jackson's methods were a necessary evil that forged a legend out of raw talent, or unforgivable abuse that created a deeply broken man, forever searching for the childhood he was never allowed to have. The world gets a polished, smiling product, unaware that the real price was paid in tears long before the first record was sold. The terror of his father's belt is replaced by the roar of global adoration. It's 1982, and the release of Thriller isn't just a career milestone, it's a cultural detonation. He becomes the most famous human being on the planet, his music and videos shattering racial barriers on channels like MTV. But as his star ascends to unprecedented heights, his physical form begins a slow, perplexing metamorphosis that will captivate and disturb the public for decades. The first major catalyst occurs on January 27, 1984, on a soundstage in Los Angeles during the filming of a high-profile Pepsi commercial. For the sixth take, he descends a grand staircase as a pyrotechnic display erupts behind him. A stray spark, however, lands in his hair. For a few terrifying seconds, nobody realizes he is on fire. He continues to dance, a professional to the core, until crew members tackle him to the ground to extinguish the flames that have now caused second- and third-degree burns to his scalp and face. This near-fatal accident becomes a dark turning point. The excruciating pain introduces him to powerful prescription painkillers, planting the seeds of a dependency that will haunt him for the rest of his life. The reconstructive surgeries required to treat the burns also opened the door to further cosmetic procedures, altering the very architecture of his face. Simultaneously, a more insidious change is taking place, one that can't be blamed on a single accident. Small, pale patches begin to appear on his skin. At first they are easily covered by makeup, but they spread relentlessly. He is diagnosed with vitiligo, a chronic autoimmune disorder that destroys the pigment-producing cells in the skin, and lupus, which can exacerbate the condition. He is now fighting a secret two-front war, one against the public's insatiable gaze, and another against his own body. He starts using powerful depigmenting creams, not to become white as the tabloids sneer, but to even out the blotchy, mismatched tones that the disease is creating. This leads to one of the most bizarre and enduring rumors in pop culture history, the story that he sleeps in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber to halt the aging process, a piece of fiction accompanied by a staged photo that he later admits was a publicity stunt. The irony is staggering. While the world debates whether he is a self-hating man trying to erase his heritage, he is privately dealing with the disfiguring disease. The unresolved debate among medical and cultural historians is not if he had vitiligo, the autopsy would later confirm it, but to what extent his subsequent surgeries were a psychological response to losing control of his own image, an attempt to build a new face when his old one was being stolen from him. He flees the relentless scrutiny of the world to build his own. In 1988, he purchases a sprawling 2,700-acre property in the rolling hills of Santa Barbara County, California, and christens it Neverland Valley Ranch. This is not just a home. It's a meticulously crafted fantasy, the physical manifestation of a childhood he never had. He erects a full-scale amusement park with a Ferris wheel, a carousel, and a roller coaster. A private movie theater with its own candy counter offers free snacks. A zoo houses elephants, giraffes, and his famous chimpanzee, Bubbles. The ranch becomes a sanctuary, not just for him, but for countless children, many of them sick or underprivileged, who are bussed in for days of pure, unadulterated fun. It's an act of profound generosity, a desire to give others the joy that was beaten out of him. Yet, this gilded cage of innocence carries a deeply unsettling undercurrent. The lines between man and child, benefactor and friend, begin to blur in a way that the outside world finds increasingly strange. He hosts sleepovers, sharing his own bedroom with his young guests, a detail he openly discusses as completely non-sexual and pure. But purity is not what the world sees. In August 1993, this idyllic fantasy shatters. The Los Angeles Police Department descends on Neverland, raiding the property based on an allegation of child abuse from the father of a 13-year-old boy who had been a frequent guest. The raid itself is a historical media event, broadcast live, turning the sanctuary into a crime scene. Detectives comb through his private quarters, searching for evidence. While they find nothing to directly substantiate the claims at the time, the damage is done. The public narrative shifts permanently. The man who wanted to heal the world is now accused of preying on its most vulnerable. The legal debate that still rages is whether this was a genuine case of abuse or a sophisticated multi-million-dollar shakedown. The case is settled out of court for an enormous sum, a decision his legal team makes against his wishes to avoid a protracted and messy public trial. One strange, mysterious detail that emerges from this era is his giving tree, a massive oak on the Neverland grounds where he claimed to write many of his hit songs, but which later accusers would describe as a place of manipulation. The irony is haunting. The very place he built to escape the traumas of his past becomes the source of a new, public trauma that will eclipse everything else and dog him to his grave. The ghost of the 1993 settlement never truly vanishes. It lingers for a decade until it reemerges with a vengeance, this time ignited by a British documentary. The film shows him holding hands with another young boy, Gavin Arvizo, and candidly discussing their shared sleeping arrangements. The public reaction is immediate and explosive. What he portrays as innocent friendship, prosecutors see as a pattern of predatory behavior. In November 2003, he is arrested, and the stage is set for what would be dubbed the trial of the century. The Santa Barbara County Courthouse in Santa Maria, a normally quiet town, transforms into a global media circus in early 2005. Satellites beam images of his arrival each day, sometimes late, sometimes appearing frail, once even showing up in his pajama bottoms after a hospital visit. The trial isn't just about the 10 criminal counts against him. It's a public dissection of his entire life, his eccentricities, his changing face, his finances, and his reclusive lifestyle are all put on trial alongside the allegations. The prosecution paints a picture of a modern-day Peter Pan who uses his fame and fortune to lure boys to his fantasy world, then manipulates their families with gifts and promises. The defense, led by the formidable Thomas Messerow, counters with a narrative of their own, that this is a colossal extortion attempt from a family of grifters who had previously targeted other celebrities. The proceedings become a theater of the bizarre. Witnesses offer contradictory testimony. The accuser's mother, a key witness for the prosecution, crumbles under cross-examination, her credibility damaged by evidence of past fraudulent claims. A strange detail that captures the public imagination is the testimony about the Jesus juice, the name he allegedly used for wine, which the prosecution claims he used to ply the children. The defense, however, argues it was a harmless, silly nickname. The legal debate that persists among scholars is whether the jury's final decision was based purely on the evidence presented or if it was a rejection of the prosecution's reliance on the star's weirdness as a substitute for concrete proof. On June 13, 2005, after months of testimony and days of deliberation, the verdict is read. Not guilty, on all counts. A wave of relief washes over him. But the victory is Pyrrhic. He's acquitted in the eyes of the law, but in the court of public opinion, the shadow of doubt is a permanent stain. He flees America, a self-imposed exile, the king without a kingdom. He returns to America a changed man, thinner, more reclusive, and haunted by the specter of financial ruin. The acquittal did not restore his reputation or his bank account. By 2009, he is deep in debt, and the only way out is to do the one thing he swore he'd never do again: go on tour. He announces this is it, a grueling residency of 50 shows at London's O2 Arena. It's an unprecedented undertaking for a 50-year-old performer, especially one who hasn't toured in over a decade. Rehearsals begin at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Outwardly, he appears to be back in form. He glides across the stage, his voice is strong, and the old magic seems to be flickering back to life. But behind the scenes, a more desperate story is unfolding. He is plagued by crippling insomnia, a lifelong affliction now magnified by the immense pressure of the comeback. He cannot sleep without medical intervention, and he has found a doctor willing to provide it: Conrad Murray, a cardiologist hired to oversee his health during the tour. Dr. Murray begins administering nightly infusions of propofol, a powerful surgical anesthetic, in the privacy of his rented Holmby Hills mansion. This is a wildly unorthodox and dangerous practice. Propofol is meant for operating rooms with sophisticated monitoring equipment, not a private bedroom. The last few weeks of his life become a strange and perilous routine. He finishes rehearsals, returns home, and puts his life in the hands of a doctor administering a hospital-grade anesthetic to treat insomnia. This leads to the unresolved debate that defined the subsequent legal proceedings. Was Dr. Murray a compassionate physician trying to help a desperate patient, or a reckless employee enabling a powerful celebrity's addiction for a hefty paycheck? On the morning of June 25, 2009, he is found unresponsive in his bed. Frantic efforts to revive him fail. The king of pop is dead. The autopsy reveals a lethal dose of propofol, along with a cocktail of other sedatives. Dr. Murray is eventually convicted of involuntary manslaughter, a verdict that provides a legal conclusion but little emotional closure. A mysterious detail that emerged during the trial was that in his final hours, he was not surrounded by family or friends, but lay alone in a room filled with medical equipment, oxygen tanks, and vials of drugs. A sterile, clinical end for an artist who brought so much vibrant life to the world. The final tragic irony is that his comeback tour, meant to be his salvation, became his death sentence. The narrative quiets down now, the frantic pace of his life giving way to an unsettling stillness. His story doesn't conclude with a neat resolution, but instead unravels into a tapestry of lingering questions, a complex legacy of unparalleled genius and profound human fragility. We are left to ponder not just the man himself, but our own role as the audience in his spectacular and ultimately tragic global drama. Did the unblinking eye of the public, which he both courted and fled, contribute to his isolation? Or was his fate sealed long ago in a small house in Gary, Indiana, where a boy was taught that love and pain were inextricably linked? His music endures, a timeless soundtrack to an era, yet the silence he left behind is equally powerful, echoing with the unresolved chords of his life.